Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening for Lifetime's Q&A webinar, where we hope to answer lots of questions for you and have a great discussion here tonight. My name is Kim King, and my co-host is Libby Murray, and we're excited to be with you and see what conversation comes along with our Q&A session this evening. If you're brand new to Lifetime, then maybe this is your first time ever interacting with us, and welcome. And the very first step that we usually encourage is to help us learn a little bit more about what you have in mind for your adoption, learn a little more about who you are and some of your characteristics and everything. So the first step would be to fill out our application online, which is free, and there's no obligation. It does not mean you are committing to be adopting through Lifetime. It's a way that we can just kind of meet you where you are and help you off into the right direction, whether it's through Lifetime or in another direction. But our free application is available at our website at lifetimeadoption.com/apply. Also, please do join us on Facebook. There are great tips and really a great community on Facebook on our Lifetime page, and that's at facebook.com/open.adoption. And if you'd rather talk with us first, or maybe you're not sure who your coordinator is yet, if you've already made contact with Lifetime and you're not sure who is your point of contact, just give us a call Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 Pacific time at 1-800-923-6784. That's 1-800-923-6784. And we're happy to make sure that you obtain a point of contact or a coordinator who can help you with whatever stage in the process you are, that you're at. And also you can email questions. My email is kim@lifetimeadoption.com, and you can also email apply@lifetimeadoption.com if you have questions about the application process. Maybe you've already filled it out and are waiting for a reply. I would say we usually have a response within 1 to 5 business days. So welcome, everyone, and it looks like we have a nice mixed audience here of people all throughout the process, so that's great. We're eager to start answering some of your questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. And what I love about having a mixed audience is the opportunity to get questions about all the different phases. So, and as a reminder to those of you who may already be a part of Lifetime's program, that you've probably even covered more than the basics because you have access to webinars that are only open to people who are currently waiting as Lifetime families. But what's cool about having both audiences mixed together is that there's so much to think about in every phase of adoption, and sometimes it's not until you get to that phase and you hear someone else ask a question who already went through that phase, and you think, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that yet. I'm not even there. And so it's really a great opportunity for all of you to help each other too, and to teach each other. And also what I have loved seeing through these, especially in recent months, is how you're all helping each other with the tips and resources and comments that you've learned as you got answers to those things too. So I really want to encourage all of you to keep up the great work with participating, because it really is blessing others, and it really helps us too. I want to make a special thank you, I think, if that's the way to say it, for all of you who made time to attend last week's webinar, because it was something that we felt moved to share, and we were so privileged and honored to see the feedback that came from that, and so we were so glad that it was helpful to you. If you missed that at all, you can go to adoptionteleconference.com and catch last week's webinar where we talked about just some of the hard expectations that come with adoption timing and waiting, and setting goals, but maintaining healthy expectations and realistic deadlines when it comes to your adoption success. So you can go to adoptionteleconference.com and catch that. And as always, we love feedback about any webinars or ideas for future ones too. So I'm just grateful to see all of you coming back. And for those of you who are new, welcome. And I just want you to settle in and not be nervous, but just chime in when you have a question, because that's what tonight is all about. It's just really an open Q&A. Kim and I have no idea what we're going to get to talk about tonight. And so we just show up and answer as many questions as we can. Now, Kim, I do like to share, just because I know for previous webinars, it seems like I know all of you who are on here live right now, and those of you who may be listening to this later, adoption may be all you can think about, especially in this moment. And so sometimes I know in those moments I easily get distracted and off topic when it comes to my questions, and I just want all of you to know that if something comes to mind, just pop it up, and if it's something we can't cover tonight because maybe it's unique to you or it's off topic and we don't have much time to dive into that specific area, we don't just toss away your questions. We really do try and follow up and make sure you get the right person to answer that, or the answer, or the next step, or the best resource to really get you some clarity. So feel free to type in anything, even if it's, I forget who my main contact at Lifetime is. Can you tell me, anything that comes to mind. We want to be as much help as possible. And sometimes what we're doing is a little bit of multitasking. So while Kim's answering questions, sometimes I'm typing with people that we can't, address on air. And then other times she's switching back and forth and doing that too. So I just want to encourage you to speak up, share your comments, questions tonight. This is your adoption Q&A. This is about your questions. So we did have a couple to start us off, which is great. We don't have to warm you guys up at all. So let's see. I'm going to start with this one because we don't get to talk about this a lot. I feel like sometimes it's easy to focus on states we work with for adoptive families because, Kim, one of the things, just as a little behind-the-scenes insight to you listening, one of the most common questions that Kim and I get on webinars that we really can't answer because it's different for everyone is you're all chiming in saying, do you work with families in Georgia? Do you work with families in Pennsylvania? Do you work with families in California? Do you work with families in Nevada? All the way through the 50 states. And so it's impossible for us to answer yes, 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 and like how that would go because every state has slightly different adoption laws. But the thing is that we really can work with families across the country, but you need to apply, you need to call so that we can let you know how that would go for you based on where you live.
And there is one kind of finite answer to that is that Lifetime is pretty much able to work with a birth mom from anywhere in the U.S. Except for New Mexico. As far as I know, New Mexico is the only state we can't assist a birth mom in because from what I understand and speaking with an attorney in New Mexico maybe like a year ago or so, he said that New Mexico has some sort of thing where birth moms can only work with a local agency in New Mexico. So that's the only state that we can't. So.
And I wouldn't be surprised even if that has changed because if we know anything from adoption law, sometimes it can go
That's true.
Year to year.
Well, maybe we should give him a call back and check up on it.
But this question is great because you basically answered this. It says, in what states do you work with birth mothers? Is there a chart available that it describes the expectations that can help us plan and budget? And I would say even if we had a chart, we would still put a bunch of asterisks on there about how it would just depend on the circumstances and the situation. One thing to think about is while most birth moms who are calling Lifetime are pregnant and want to place their newborn at birth, sometimes we get women calling after their baby's birth, maybe a 6-month-old, a 3-month-old, a year-old. And sometimes states even vary on adoption law depending on if she's pregnant and giving birth at the time the adoption happens or if the baby's already been born. So sometimes even little details like that can change what to expect in that match. And what I love about Lifetime's program is that we're not just saying, here's your opportunity, let us know how it goes. We are holding your hand. We are walking through with you and that birth mother who chose you. And really, lately I feel like what we're doing a lot of is getting a birth mom talking with an attorney before she actually talks with the adoptive parents, just so that she can get an expectation of what her situation will require, and then we can pass that along to the adoptive parents that she chose to. So before you even enter into the match, we can help you have an idea. And I will share that sometimes when we know it's going to be a very costly situation as far as legal fees go, sometimes we will look for families who've already said that they can manage that well. Or we may call and say, you know, we're working on this possibility, you know, what's your ability to move forward? And if you're not able to accept that, it's not something we look down on you upon. We just don't want to get you fallen, you know, into a friendship with a birth mom only to have to say, gosh, we didn't have any idea it would require this much of our budget, and we're not even sure how we're going to make this happen. So,
you know, and this is something that when you have your phone conference with your coordinator here at Lifetime in the early stages of being considered for our program and you considering us for your adoption as well, I know that all of our coordinators will go through the specific budget that we ask families to plan for. So the budget we're asking you to plan for should pretty much cover almost every case that we're going to see, whether you end up needing just one attorney due to the state that you're matched with, or maybe you need to have 2 different attorneys. That won't necessarily double the cost, but it may add, you know, $1,000 or $2,000 on top of just needing one attorney, because some states will say, well, you have to have one attorney for your paperwork and then a different attorney for birth mom's paperwork, so you have to pay for both. And then there are some states that will only allow an agency to do the legal work. So any of those options are very common in our program, and so we will already prepare you to have that budget planned before you ever even come into the program. So you are going to probably be very it's not going to be very likely that you're going to have to say no to someone because of the legal costs, unless it's like one of those extenuating things like Libby's talking about. That doesn't happen very often.
You know, Camille brought up something, and we don't get to talk about this a lot, but I feel like because of the nature of Lifetime's program, that sometimes when we're talking about having to hire an agency to complete the legal work of an adoption, there's a lot of families, even some of Lifetime's currently contracted families, but especially I think people who are just starting to research who's going to help me adopt. It starts to sound like, well, why do I need 2 places? You know, why do I need to hire 2 places to help me? And I just wanted to clarify that, you know, in most cases, I would say 9 out of 10, when we refer to hiring an agency to do the legal, it's in the sense of the same way that you're going to hire an attorney. It's just that state's laws require a certain type of adoption professional to take signatures from that birth mom. You know, there are some states where she's required to meet so many times with a counselor or a social worker before she signs with an attorney. There are other states where she's required to be assisted by an adoption agency in her state. Some states say, you know, whatever goes down with the adoptive family state is all we need, you know, just let us know what we can do to help. So that's why the answer can change match to match, because depending on the states involved, sometimes even the counties involved, our guidance and our referrals and our resources through that specific opportunity for the people involved could vary a little, which is why we really take matches into priority, and we want to make sure they get as much support as possible so that there's not one blanket answer for everyone. But I want to put your mind at ease, because here's the other side. You know, when you're thinking about your adoption budget and legal fees, not to think, oh my gosh, I've been researching places, and one of the reasons I'm researching Lifetime is because it seems like it'll actually maximize my budget in the sense that I'm paying for services I need, not just, you know, one huge all-inclusive thing that I don't even know if my match will require. And so I know some of the costs of the adoption agencies in my area, and there's no way I can hire that on top of working with Lifetime and an attorney in my area or something like that. It's not that you're having to pay that agency to find you a birth mom. So you're only going to pay that agency for legal fees, which is significantly less than if you were to just sign on with them to find your match. So those are all things we guide you through.
Yes.
The other side of this is that I have taken these calls, Kim has. I know our birth mom coordinators get these calls a lot. Sometimes there are places that will call us and say, gosh, you know, I like Joe and Jane on your website. I have a birth mom here that I showed them to, and she's not satisfied with any of the families in our program, and so we wondered if you could, connect us with Joe and Jane. Would they be willing to sign on with us to work with this birth mom? And our first question is always, how much will it cost them? And if that agency says, well, our full agency fees are this, then we will say, our families are not budgeted to hire 2 agencies. They're not able to do that. But if you want to refer this birth mom to us, and you could do this for the legal fees, which would be only a few thousand usually, then we can connect you with that family. So we're really working to protect the family too, because we don't want to put you in a position where you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to do everything, or I'm not going to be able to adopt this baby, because we know it's nearly impossible to say no when you hear about an actual baby. But you shouldn't go broke or into hock unnecessarily for your adoption. Just to do the basics, just to get the signatures and go through it.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is, like, the nutshell of how to look at this is that we're going to help you be prepared ahead of time and let you know the complete budget and all the expenses we ask lifetime families to plan for. And so you can decide ahead of time, okay, is this something I'm willing to do? Is this doable for me? Is this something I want to work toward? Whatever it may be, you set the pace. And then, basically we are free to pursue your adoption knowing that you've created that budget for legal work and that we're not putting you in a position to be financially overextended. And our whole thing, like from Marty Caldwell, our founder, is that families can create a budget, know the expenses in advance, and stick within that budget. So we're minimizing the likelihood of any unexpected expenses, and especially emotional downs, and working with a third party who knows the birth mom and Lifetime doesn't. So we want to know the birth mom so we can share all the information directly with you.
And a lot of you are saying, what are those numbers? Again, it's really hard for us to specify that in one webinar, just because.
But email me if you want to know about the budget, and I will email me what your state, of course your name, and what your state is, and then I will send you the most appropriate information for where you are and everything.
Absolutely, and remember too that sometimes that just I've worked with some families that have said, gosh, I've done research in my state, and it's actually pretty economical. I know this is doable. You have to just remember, keep building your budget when possible, because then it will open you up to more opportunities for out-of-state, opportunities where you're not really sure what to expect. A good example is that sometimes even state to state, the cost of an adoption home study may vary greatly. So there are some states where it could be several thousand, and others where it's only, $1,000, maybe $2,000 just to get a home study done, or even less than that. So again, sometimes it's things outside of your control and outside of our control, but that's what helps us when you apply too, is that we can, there's been some families that would have been able to say, do you realize that where you live, and it's not to tell you to move or something, but to just prepare you so that you can, best get ready so you can say yes when that time comes and be confident about moving forward. So that's great. Let's see here. Okay. There was a question earlier. I'm trying to scroll up here. You've all been chiming in. Great. I love this. There was a question earlier that said, Kim, it was asking, does Lifetime do open adoptions, closed adoptions? Am I even saying that right? Let's talk a little bit about what an average adoption at Lifetime looks like.
I would say that most birth moms want to at least be able to consider which family she wants to become mom and dad or mom for her child. Wait, I didn't say that correctly. If she's considering a single adoptive mom or a married couple, then she wants to look at their profile first, usually, to kind of see what her child's life might be like with them. And then from there, she would probably want to have a phone call and basically we'll work with the birth mom to help her prepare to be matched. Usually we wait until she's at least 16 to 20 weeks along before we're going to have any contact between the birth mom and the families that she's interested in. And this helps minimize emotional risk to you and birth mom and helps maximize your exposure to other birth moms in the meantime as well. So basically there are some things that we're going to work on with her, and then when she's at that point where things are a little more stable, it's not just that she called us once, but we've gotten to know her, then we're going to call you guys and share everything we know about her with you since she has asked for you specifically after looking at your profile, and then we're going to schedule a phone call. So that is kind of like the starting point of open adoption, I think, just how it's just the foundation is she gets to know who you are and gets to pick a family that she's comfortable with and maybe even get to talk with you. And then from there, usually as the adoption planning progresses, the adoptive parents and the birth mom will communicate like through text, phone calls, or emails. Maybe they might even go out and meet each other in person, like travel, perhaps. I mean, I would say don't get too bent out of shape if you're like, wait, I don't know if I can get away, for more than just traveling for the birth of the baby, and I don't know if that's in our budget. Don't worry about that because most birth moms are fine knowing that there are some limitations and definitely knowing you're going to be there for the birth of the baby. But sometimes it does involve meeting her in person ahead of time, but I'd say that's more up to the birth mom if she'd like that, and then up to you guys if it's doable. So most of the communication is like phone calls, emails, texting, that type of thing. And then you usually are going to meet each other face-to-face at the time of the birth. And I know we're focusing here on a newborn adoption, and that's because about 95 to 97% of our adoptions are newborn. And here at Lifetime, what we consider a newborn is the baby hasn't left the hospital yet. And there have been other adoptions, of course, these lovely little children that we see these pictures coming through, or they were a toddler or a school-age child. I'd say that's far more rare. That's maybe just a few times a year. So mainly the adoptions that we see here are newborn, planned during pregnancy or just after the birth or just at the birth. So then, you will have usually the opportunity to meet each other in person at that time if she'd like to, and maybe spend some time together while you're waiting for everyone to be able to discharge from the hospital. So that's, usually a time that adoptive parents recall, they cherish those moments. They love having those memories and some of the conversations they got to have in the early days of their child's life. And, maybe get some photos as well of people in different combinations, and all of you together. And so I would say that's the foundation. So when you're adopting, usually birth mom and you are not strangers. You know each other. You've already started to develop a connection to where she feels comfortable with you, and you know that she's choosing you very purposefully to be the parents of her child. And then after that, I would say it's not uncommon to have occasional phone calls in the early days, but mainly letters and photos twice a year, I would say is pretty standard. I would say almost every birth mom wants to know that the family can promise them letters and photos a couple times a year as the child grows up. That's usually something, Libby, you've worked with many birth moms over the years where you've heard women say, I couldn't even imagine choosing adoption if I had to never know what became of my baby. So there are definitely some benefits here.
There are so many different goals, I guess, when it comes to a birth mom and open adoption too. One that was coming to mind as you were talking was a woman I spoke to last week on the weekend, and she had actually done adoption before, and the way she wants the adoption is she wants more contact during the process and in choosing the adoptive parents, but after the adoption, she's just really not sure how she feels about staying in touch. She doesn't want it to be confusing for the child. That's a really common concern among birth moms when they think about open adoption is, well, I want to make sure that they know that that's mom and dad. I'm not, mommy mom. But I reassured her and said, every woman's different, and open adoption essentially means that you know who adopts your baby and they know where the baby came from. So however you want this to go is what the adoptive parents will support. So what I love about open adoption today is that when I talk to women like that who aren't really sure how much of a connection they want after the adoption, I love knowing that we're working with families who would honor that if she decided, yes, I would like to know how my baby's doing. And for those of you on the call who might be a little bit new to that concept, or maybe you're okay with that concept, but you still are very curious about what is that like, and what would that be like for me specifically and my child and in that moment. And that's what I love about hearing birth mothers talk about what open adoption means to them, because I think it'll give you a greater peace of mind knowing that it's not, she doesn't want to know how her baby's doing because she's checking up on you. She wants to know how her baby's doing because she's doubting herself and hoping that she made the best possible loving decision for her child. So it's not so much that she thinks you're harming her child. It's she just wants that affirmation, that confirmation, that reassurance, just that proof that, oh, wow, I made a very positive decision for my child. Look how good he's doing. Look how much they love him, how much he's just laughing and he's healthy and got the little chubby rolly thighs and learning to walk. And, just when you hear birth moms, usually when they talk about that first, sometimes even that first visit you have after the adoption, or even just those first photos or even text messages or something like that, when they talk about those first contacts after the adoption takes place, you can just hear the peace and the relief in their voice when they are sharing their story, because it was so meaningful to them to not hold their breath anymore. Now they could know, okay, this isn't a helpless baby I'm just handing over. This is a baby that I loved, and I was so intentional and thoughtful in choosing these people to raise him that I don't have to chew on my lip every day or wrinkle my forehead and worry or stay up nights just, wearing holes in my sheets because my legs won't sit still because I'm just tossing and turning and thinking about, is this baby okay, is this baby okay? She's going to build the trust with you before the adoption happens. Whether or not she wants a lot of, friendly contact after, she will be able to have that peace of mind. I did the right thing for my baby. So it's not really that she's skeptical about you. It's actually her own confidence in her decision that she's concerned about, that she needs to heal from. And that bittersweet choice of, I did the right thing for my baby, it's hard for me, but mostly what I'm worried about is, did I go the right direction for my child's sake?
Yes.
So open adoption, and then for you, I hear this from so many families, and it always touches my heart and gives me chills, because it's so hard to imagine open adoption with a stranger. And birth moms will say that too, like, oh, I don't know if I want to keep in touch. I don't even know who these people are yet. But when you get to know each other, then it turns into, well, how soon can I talk to you again? Like, I like talking to you, or I like knowing how you're doing. Not every adoption is the same. Not every connection is going to feel like, like a deep bond right away. Some of it takes time, but I love when I talk to these parents and they will actually say, we look forward to telling her how our son's doing, like the milestones he's taking, that they get to share that with someone who cares about him as much as they do.
Yes. Libby, just a few weeks back, you and Heather did a webinar on open adoption. And if people listening to the call tonight are very new to the concept of open adoption, please email me and let me know that you are open to learning about open adoption. I promise you it's not some weird thing. I promise you that we're not going to be asking a family to make a commitment that's unsafe for them or the child or the birth mom either. Email me, kim@lifetimeadoption.com, and I will send you the link to that webinar on open adoption, because even when I listened to the replay after the live event, I I thought it was amazing, and I wasn't on the webinar, so I can toot the horn for Heather and Libby. It was an awesome webinar about open adoption, and I just love what Heather brings. She doesn't do webinars as often. We would love to have her more often, but she just always brings really good insight and is very down to earth about it. And this is really the reality of open adoption, and here are the things you don't need to worry about, and some of the things you might be worrying about, we've never actually seen that happen in our program. So please email me and let us send you that link. My email is kim@lifetimeadoption.com. Let us send you that link, and keep your heart and mind open to the information, and just give it a try listening to the webinar and see if that may help ease any fears or concerns.
Mm-hmm. I love this question. I wanted to talk about this because I think what's really great is sometimes to get past some of those initial questions about how do I get started, what are the first steps, how do I basically get in the door, but then I love some of these questions coming from those of you who are thinking about, all right, well, yeah, I have those questions too, but I'm also thinking about once I get to the other side of the room, which is I've been chosen by a birth mom, and what's that like? So I think it's great because you need to think down the road. Actually, some of you might laugh at this, but there are times when we've called adoptive parents and they've almost seemed surprised. Like, oh my gosh, what? A woman chose us to adopt her baby? And we're like, isn't that why you came to us? And so did you actually need to think, this is going to happen? This is down the road. This is why I'm taking this step tonight on this webinar. So I just love that you're all thinking ahead. But this question is really great too because it allows us, we'll go over a little bit about what it's like, for birth mothers to call us. And so this says, what percentage of birth moms come to you during the first trimester? They call Lifetime early in their pregnancy. My answer at first, and I thought, well, we might as well share this too because I think this would interest other people. It really can vary. I will share that this time of year, especially as we get into November, December, we will tend to get a lot of women calling early in their pregnancy because you can piece it together in your mind, but there are many unplanned pregnancies that happen over the holidays. I was watching something. We have a lot of, we get a lot of calls from women in Texas, and I know that last year they had a significant freeze, and there was actually some record births happening in August and September because of last year's first ice storm that they had out in North Texas. So sometimes even the weather might influence, that storm I think happened around late November, early December, something like that. So, not only was it coupled with the holidays, but also with the inability to travel and get out of your house. And when you're bunkered down with lonely people in cold weather, sometimes people come upon unplanned pregnancy. And then other times, sometimes we notice that the change of seasons, like sometimes even the start of school might prompt a surge of birth mothers calling early in their pregnancy. Other times we go through times like lately, we've been getting a lot of calls from women very late in their pregnancy, in fact, due within days of calling or the same day. And just because she calls on the day she's due doesn't necessarily mean she's delivering in that moment, but that happens too. So percentage-wise, I would say my experience would tell you that most women are not even beginning to seriously think about or make, intentional moves toward researching adoption or choosing adoptive parents until they're in their late second or third trimester. But there are some women, like I talked to a woman actually I think it was Monday, and she was about 10 weeks along, so first trimester, and she just really wants to make sure everything's lined up because she knows she wants to go this direction. She has goals in mind. Right now she's in a really hard situation. She just does not see her situation improving by the time this baby comes. So even though she's early, She wants to know that things are starting. And what we always tell women is that it's never too soon or too late to do adoption. But what that means is she can start getting things in order. She can start, talking with a counselor or another birth mother about what it's like. She can learn about adoption and really craft how she wants that to go. And then when she's a little bit further along in her pregnancy, if she's about, sometimes we make an exception for as early as 12 weeks, but on average, most women aren't usually ready to talk with adoptive parents until they're closer to halfway through the pregnancy. Then that's when she can engage, more with you and say, I've been checking you out. I'd like to learn more about you. But don't be surprised if she's been researching adoption since she was 10 weeks along, but she doesn't really have peace about moving forward or that confidence, yes, I'm ready to do this, until maybe the 8th month. So she could have been thinking about it a really long time before she ever reached you. So sometimes I would say that percentage might be a little skewed because the adoptive parents might be thinking, we didn't find out about her until a week before her due date, and meanwhile she's actually been looking at your profile for 3 months. Mm-hmm. So it really can vary, but it's a big passion of mine in my role at Lifetime, but it's on Lifetime's heart where we just really try and make sure that these women know it is never too late for adoption, so they can take as much time as they need to decide and not feel pressured to have everything in order by a certain timeline. And whenever I'm able to share that with birth moms, Kim, I just always love this because it never fails. I will talk with a birth mom, and even if she's about 3 or 4 months along in her pregnancy, sometimes I get this sense of urgency, like, I know I don't have much time left, am I calling too late kind of thing. And whenever I'm able to say, even if you were due tomorrow, you could still take as much time as you need to think this over and make it go the way you want it to, the sigh of relief that comes out of her, it's always reassurance for me to keep sharing that. Because these women need to know it's up to me. Nobody is telling me it's now or never kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And what that does for all of our adoptive families is that typically it means that she's a little bit more set in her decision by the time she involves you in her plans. Mm-hmm. So because she hasn't been pressured to decide by a certain time, when you get to talk with her, usually she's feeling a little bit more sure about moving forward. But this also kind of leads to another question we had earlier, Kim, and this said, how do we get through, if we've gone through a failed match before, how do we not place those fears or those tendencies to doubt on the next birth mom who chooses us? So Kim, when you talk with families, I know that sometimes is the number one question, is what if she changes her mind? How, basically, I know families want to ask, how can I make sure I never go through a birth mom changing her mind? But there's so much more to that, and learning about open adoption and a birth mother's choice allows families to have a greater understanding of what it means when we talk about the right match, the right fit. But, there are times, Kim, I know you've worked with families who have called Lifetime after they've been through a failed match, maybe at another place. Maybe they were looking on their own. Maybe it was a personal friend and it just didn't go the way they thought it was going to. How do you usually guide a family who's maybe gone through a failed adoption already as they go to pursue another match?
Actually, I just talked to someone today who asked me that. Well, I don't know if she really asked me that, but I knew that she knew, okay, she had been through a terrible scenario before coming to us here at Lifetime, and it was a scenario that should have never happened with unethical people involved. And she said that, because of that, she's feeling leery. And of course, you feel leery and skeptical, and how can I make sure this doesn't happen to me again? And, I want to make sure that not that she was saying this, but this is a combination of things that families have shared over the years. How can I make sure I control the situation so that this doesn't happen again? I'm going to do the opposite of what I did with this first birth mom. I'm going to do the opposite of that with the next birth mom so I can make sure that this doesn't have the same outcome. So what I said today to the woman I was with, and she's adopted before too, so she knows, she can be successful with adoption. But I just told her, you're going to need to have that awareness that the things that happened to you in the past, that thing that happened to you should not have happened. It was unethical. Should not have happened. And going forward, just be aware, I can't put that on my next adoption professional. I can't put that on the next birth mom who just is ethical and has, the adoption professional is ethical and the birth mom has the best of intentions and has no idea that someone else would ever do this to someone, And so you just have to look at it as a fresh start each time, and just be very conscious of that. And I think it's just the awareness. And she said, yeah, that's, kind of easier said than done. And I said, yeah, but maybe it's going to take some time for you to get to that place where you can say, okay, I'm going to have a fresh start and I'm not going to put my, what happened to me in the past on the next people who come into my adoption journey. So I think it's just kind of like a work at your own pace type of thing, but definitely just the awareness of it. That's not really what you should do. You shouldn't try to do the opposite to get an opposite outcome because each birth mom is an individual.
Right, and every family, each one of you in our audience tonight is individual. So if you're the type of person that needs some downtime after you go through a disappointment, then take it.
Yes.
If there have been times even where families have gone through a fall through or a birth mom's change of heart at the last minute, within our program that we've said, if you need to take some time and put your plans on hold right now to kind of reset your mind, renew your spirits, and just get things back in order, you can take advantage of Lifetime's freeze period and not lose time on your adoption. And just know, too, within Lifetime's program, when a family does experience a failed match, that we add that time back onto their contract, too. So we also understand, because our goal is not to see you flounder. We want to see you succeed. We want to see you welcome that baby home. And though it's hard when families go through a reclaim or a failed match, sometimes, a failed match doesn't just mean the baby was born and it didn't turn into an adoption. Sometimes it's, gosh, we were matched with her for 4 weeks, and then in her 8th month, she just decided, I can't go through with this. I want to stop the match. And they're back to waiting again. But I know that it can be just as disappointing as if you saw that baby in person. So we don't take it lightly, but we also keep perspective. And so really you have to be honest with yourself about how you're handling it. And then if you have any forgiveness issues, if you have any resentment, you need to really personally address that within yourself so that you, like Kim said, aren't handing that down to the next birth mom. Because here's the thing, you don't ever want a birth mom to go through with her adoption just because she's afraid of disappointing you. You want her to go through with the adoption because she is confident you are the right decision for her baby's long-term future. So, but it's hard. And so one of the things that came to my mind was, this is why it's so important to us at Lifetime to walk hand in hand with you through that match, because we know that no two matches are the same, no two birth moms are the same, no two families are the same. So feel comfortable, at least if you can't voice stuff to the birth mother, that you can talk with her coordinator, the one that's walking you through the match, and say, you know, we went through this before, and I'm trying not to place all of that experience, as skepticism onto this, but I have noticed these patterns. Do you think I should be concerned, or how should I navigate this, or can we find out these answers? To keep asking questions. I think sometimes just shining light in those dark corners is the best way to move through those moments that might hold you back from something amazing.
Yes. And we were talking about this too is, not to assume. Not to assume the worst. If you feel like you're detecting a pattern that's taking you down a path that seems a little too familiar, try not to assume. Always give the benefit of the doubt and talk with the coordinator and see, well, are these patterns I'm detecting, like Libby said, I'm repeating you, Libby, but my point was
No,
don't assume, give benefit of doubt.
Well, and that it's okay if you do notice patterns. This is also why it's vitally important that you communicate with us during your match so that we can watch that too and say, oh, she returns my phone calls, within the hour, but she's not getting back to you. That's strange. And to start comparing notes and having these different avenues. But the other side of that, I keep going back to this, gosh, was it a story I think we did last month, and the adopted mom talked about how they had gone through a fall through before where the birth mother just sort of like dropped contact. And then eventually everyone just sort of figured out that she'd given birth and she just hadn't told anyone. And so when they were matched again, they had a really strong bond and relationship with that birth mother, with the new match. But there was a period of 1 or 2 weeks towards the end of her pregnancy where she just wasn't in touch. And so the adoptive parents were starting to freak out again, like, oh my gosh, it's happening again. She's dropped contact. She's changed her mind. And Lifetime kept following up with her, and then finally, when she did reconnect, the birth mom just shared, well, I've been going through finals. I think she was in her senior year of high school. I've been going through finals, and it's just, I'm exhausted, and I just really needed some downtime to process. So it wasn't that she changed her mind. It was just she needed a little quiet time. Now, whether or not she could have just communicated, right now I don't want to talk, that's a totally other story, because honestly, I have to say, as a grown woman, I still have a tendency sometimes to just shut down when I'm overwhelmed in something like that, in a very challenging, difficult decision time. While there are other times where I might say, gosh, I need to at least just tell this person, hey, please don't expect to hear from me as often as usual right now because I'm going through finals and I'm exhausted and I just need some privacy, kind of thing. Either rate, it shows us is that the same pattern happened twice, but the outcome was different with each one. So they hung in there. They hung in there and they saw it through. They didn't freak out and just say, we can't go through that again, we're done. We wipe our hands clean. But there are other times, again, Lifetime is we're very personal with our matches. So there are rare times, but I have in my many years here, and I know Kim has too, sometimes we might even say, I suggest you let go of this match because this birth mother's patterns are inconsistent, or we're just concerned that it's too risky. And so if we have concern, we will share that. But if you have concern, we want you to share it so that then we can either get you the information or watch closely the things that you're observing and get a little bit more idea of what's going on. We really want to do the best we can, but it's impossible to be fortune tellers. And in that moment when she's giving birth, sometimes things change. And I know that all of you, when you imagine the idea of just meeting that baby for one moment and how hard it would be to walk away from that child, that you can imagine how much greater that feeling is for these birth moms. And that some of these women just, it's not a personal rejection of the adoptive parents when she decides that she's the best choice for her child's permanent future. So, but again, open adoption really minimizes that chance. And for those of you who have gone through a failed adoption, I don't say that lightly as in you did something wrong. Typically, families do nothing wrong to get where they are in their adoption journey. There's no blame to carry or be responsible for. And
you know what I've seen lately is that even if a family kind of like, maybe they took things a little too far and being a little overeager with a birth moms are very usually like, okay, I'm okay with it. I'm still going to go through with the match. Like even if there was, a little something that the family did that wasn't exactly okay, that usually birth moms are really like, okay, but I still want you as my, as the adoptive parents for my baby. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've seen that lately, especially where birth moms are still on board even if a family has maybe done something that was a little taboo.
Right. True. That happens. And actually, just to, if this might surprise any of you, because it still honestly, after all this time, surprises me, but we actually have more matches fall apart because the adoptive parents change their mind about moving forward than the birth mothers changing their minds. So, and those are sometimes for reasons not extreme. Sometimes that would be a webinar in itself, the reasons why families have passed on babies. But just know that we're going to walk through that with you, getting you answers based on that situation. And that really, I would say, is one of the top 5 things that I love about Lifetime's program, because it's really, again, not one box of tools for every single match. We have, a lot of them have the same bones, the same skeleton, but each of them look different. So it's customized because you are as unique as that birth mom who's going to choose you. And, maybe that birth mom loves text messaging, but you actually like live phone calls. And so we're not going to expect, that everybody communicate the same way, all the way down to maybe one birth mom needs counseling before, during, and after the adoption, and another one just wants it 6 months after her baby's born. We're not going to force her to process her adoption plan the same way. We're not going to expect you to know everything about how to walk through those steps with this birth mom you're just now getting to know. So that's really why it's important to us to be in the loop and to be part of that. It's for your adoption's benefit.
So, Libby, I wanted to maybe have you, maybe if you could expand on something you said about passing on a birth mom. Can you just kind of give us some do's and don'ts about passing? And, I mean, like, is it okay to say no to a birth mom who chose you?
Well, I mean, I guess technically the answer is yes. It's okay to say. It's okay to decline an opportunity, but what I would say is make sure, whether you're working with Lifetime or with anyone else, that you're really honest about what you're looking for in adoption. Don't ever say yes to something just because you think you have to, like a certain age of a child maybe, or certainly when it comes to openness after adoption, please do not ever tell somebody what you think they want to hear. You need to really be confident about what you're offering to commit to in the future, because, for instance, when we're representing families to birth moms, we're in good faith saying, the families that we're working with have already said that they would be happy to keep in touch after an adoption. So it breaks our hearts the few times when a family has really sort of lied to us about that.
Yeah.
There are some things like, here's the bottom line, Kim. I could give my opinion and we could give our experience about the right or wrong reasons to pass on a baby, but, whether or not I agree, I always have to go back to the fact that, okay, as frustrating as I feel right now, because I've been doing everything I can to get this family a match, and they're actually saying no, I would hate just as much as I would hate for a birth mom to go forward just because she felt like she had to. I would hate for an adoptive family to move forward with an adoption because they felt obligated.
Right. But I think that our structure of our program,
whether or not it's meant to be.
I think that we would do our best not to put you in that position to have to say no. So maybe that there may be some frivolous reasons why people would say no to a birth mom, such as they don't feel like traveling to that state. That's not a good reason. or they have other plans around the time that she's due and they just can't make it out, or she's not due during the summer and they're a teacher, so they're going to wait for the next one and hope one is due during the summer. These are not good reasons.
Right. Or
it's not taken
or
lightly
trying to make
pass. Yeah.
Exactly. Or trying to make things go the way you want and not the way she wants. Like one situation we had, and it wasn't with a Lifetime family recently, but a birth mother called us saying, I think I may need to look for a new family because this family I'm working with right now, they don't really seem that interested in coming for my baby. But in her scenario, this birth mom had shared that they were saying, well, why don't you take the baby home and we'll be there within like a week. And it's like, what? I mean, I know most of you on the call right now are probably thinking, excuse me? I mean, I'd be there in a hot second. Like I want to touch that baby now, get that baby in my arms. And this family, just to that birth mom, it seemed like, why are you dragging your feet? Don't you want this baby? And so she was starting to doubt her choice in them, and she wanted to choose a family that was excited to be there and would be there. Here's the other part, is that a lot of these birth moms want to make sure that you're bonding with her baby right away and that that baby can leave with you so that she doesn't have to get a car seat. She doesn't have to figure out how to pay for formula and do bottles while she's trying to go back to work as soon as possible. And, everything that she's juggling, she's choosing adoption for so many different reasons. And a big part of that is because I'm not prepared to bring this newborn home. So to put her in a position to babysit her own child until you get there is unreasonable. And I totally...
She's kind of like wants you to be all-inclusive is the term that pops into my mind. Like she wants you to be there as soon as possible and take that role as mom and dad. After all, that's why she's choosing you and choosing adoption.
Right. Here's a great question, Kim, about birth mother expenses. I've heard people say I should cover birth mom expenses. What does that typically entail and what are the costs? I just wanted quickly to just mention that that can really vary. And that's part of what, like Kim was describing earlier, when it comes to Lifetime's program, we try and make sure that a family is honest with us about their limitations, because your state may also limit you on how much you can help a birth mom with medical or pregnancy-related expenses or living expenses. But also sometimes budget limitations are reasonable, and we don't want to put you in a position where, say this birth mom calls at 6 months along and she's got 4 months of rent that she's going to need help with, and you're only prepared to help with like, $1,000 worth of groceries and phone bills. So it really can vary. Many, many, many birth moms don't need that much help. Like one birth mom I talked with this weekend, she said, at first she said, and I know if I need help, the adoptive parents can help me, right? And at first I was thinking, oh, where are we going with this? But then I let her explain, and what she was really worried about was keeping her cell phone on so that she could stay in touch and make this adoption plan happen. And so I reassured her, that's no problem at all. Most families would be more than happy to cover your cell phone bill, especially to keep this match open and accessible so that you can talk with attorneys and make your doctor's appointments and talk with the adoptive parents and coordinate everything. So sometimes you have to sort of take an exhale and say, okay, expenses doesn't mean outrageous. To a birth mom, a $90 cell phone bill might be excessive because right now she has practically nothing, but to you, you're thinking, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I could afford a $90 cell phone bill on top of my regular cell phone bill for very long, but I could certainly do a few months, and so sometimes perspective is everything, because to a birth mom it's a lot, but to you it's the least you can do kind of thing. So that's an area where you need to be honest with Lifetime, and we'll help you know too. If we know that you live in a state that's not going to allow you to help, then we're not going to present you to birth moms that might need minimal or, a lot of major help. Plus,
actually,
most birth moms qualify for insurance too, so.
That's true, yeah, so that helps keep the expenses very low. I mean, I'd say it's very rare to even see someone get close to $5,000. and we have many that are under 1,000 total for birth mom expenses, if any. And that's a question that if you go to our application online, you could actually see that we allow you to select the range. And what that means is the total amount for the whole thing, like through the whole adoption, this is our cap for a budget for birth mom expenses. So you would, I think right now it says up to 1,000 or up to 3,000 or up to 5,000. And then to answer a follow-up question, yes, you would definitely always send those through whomever is doing your legal work. You would never, no matter who you're working with on your adoption, it's not okay to give funding directly to a birth mom. That's just really risky. Might end up causing a loophole in your adoption in the end, and we just really don't want that. So play it safe and buy the book, and whomever is doing your legal work needs to make sure that whatever that expense is and how it's going to be handled is totally legal in your adoption, your specific adoption with your state and her state, and then can send that directly to the attorney can send it directly to like the doctor's office or the rental office or wherever it's going, the utility company, so that way it's all paper trail, checked out, legal, right, and minimizing risk.
Yeah, you're not just handing her cash or a check. And there are times even, I mean, it's been a long time since I've heard this, but I worked with a birth mom early on, and after the baby was born, she said, I need a new washer and dryer. And the attorney involved said, that's not adoption related. If you need maybe a little bit of cash, like a gift card or a little bit of cash to hit the laundromat, while you kind of get back on your feet, sure, but, buying household appliances is not typically adoption related. So the attorney and Lifetime and the birth mom will work out, what's reasonable, what is legal, and they will do it in the best interest of the birth mom, but also in protection of the adoptive parents. Mm-hmm. So, there's just so many different scenarios.
We haven't talked about this a lot lately, but we have Lifetime Foundation, which is our 501c3 charitable organization, and we can send food and clothing and household items to birth moms. And the women who, let us know they have a need, and then we're able to send them things, they're just so appreciative. They're so appreciative, and we let them know that that's available for them even later on down the road. The adoption is behind you. The child is like 2 years old now, and you come upon a hard time, and you need us to send you a box of food or some maybe Christmas gifts for your other children that you're parenting or school supplies. The foundation is there for you, and we have the Birth Mom Blessings program there. So that often can help keep some of the costs low as well. And we get really great donations, too, from adoptive parents, like gift cards to, like, grocery stores, like Walmart, journals. I know we're usually pretty needy for journals, so things like that.
Journals and toothbrushes.
Sometimes it's underwear.
Yes, that's what I was going to say, is I think sometimes we take it for granted that, maybe we don't enjoy spending money on, the typical day-to-day garments that we need to just wear our average outfits. But some of these birth moms, especially with their growing bellies, sometimes they do need things as simple as a new bra or underwear or a pair of jeans that can actually button or go over their belly so that they can go get the mail, and not wear a nightgown everywhere. Like, it's just amazing. Perspective is everything when it comes to birth moms versus adoptive parents. We know, Kim, you and I talk a lot about the heart that we have for the journeys that adoptive parents go on to get to an adoption decision. Mm-hmm. But it's just as vital and it's just as important and huge to think about what life looks like to a birth mom to get her to the point where she's thinking about adoption. Most women don't grow up thinking, I'm going to become pregnant with a child I'm not ready to bring home. And so these women are usually in situations that most of us can identify with because we have family that we could move in with. We have family that would buy us underwear if we were in dire need, you know, or we even have a car and the ability to put gas in our car so that we could go get the items we need. And even if we had to cut back on, you know, luxuries like, you know, major cable packages for TV or eating out often or something like that, that we usually can still find a way to cover our life's necessities. And these women are often in situations where their pride is a little bit shot because they never thought they'd be in these shoes, and then their confidence is low because they're thinking, how did I get here, and am I doing the right things? And there's a lot of maybe self-doubt or blame, and any little thing, I mean, even just the 24-hour hotline impresses these women, just to know that they could get the answers. Actually, it's funny, I'm saying this right now, I'm looking at some notes that I took the other night when I talked to this one birth mom, and right before we hung up, she said, it's just really good to know you guys are there. And I didn't even do anything other than talk to her for half an hour about her questions and tell her the truth about open adoption and just listen to her. But that's a lot to her. And so perspective really, really is everything when it comes to understanding birth moms and what they're going through to reach you, and how much she respects and admires you for just being available to her. So Kim, I can't believe we've already blasted through this hour.
I feel like we
some
can go on.
we've been trying to type with some of these questions that we haven't been able to get to. In particular, I wanted to go back to some of these are about fees and what to expect with adoption budget and what's legal in your state. Those are all great questions for Kim specifically. I know that if she can't get you the answer, she'll direct you to the person who can. So you should shoot those kinds of questions over to Kim.
Unless you have a coordinator, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah, unless you have a coordinator.
She can always forward it to that coordinator.
Absolutely. I'll check your file, see who your coordinator is, and say, hello, you have a family with a question.
Exactly.
So, yes. Feel free to reach out, phone, email. If you haven't filled out your application with Lifetime, you can do that tonight. It's at lifetimeadoption.com/apply. And we will start processing that in the morning and have a response within 1 to 5 business days. And you are always welcome to call in and check on the status and make sure we got it, and, you know, ask some questions and things. We have an open door policy. If you're one of our Lifetime families, you know we have an open door policy. You know, if you have updates or questions, you don't have to wait until like a monthly check-in or something. You can reach out to your coordinator, and she'll be there to help you.
And so if you want to hang on the line a little bit after tonight, I'm going to try and answer a few of these, but I know a lot of people have already had to step off because we reached the end of our hour. So, you know, if you have questions about, maybe you already have a home study completed and you want to know if it qualifies for Lifetime, just call and ask or email. You can write, if you don't know who to contact at Lifetime, you can always email adopt@lifetimeadoption.com. I get some people that message on Facebook, and we can write back and forth with you there if that's more comfortable for you. Whatever works, we want to be there for you and just get you the answers you need. And if you're already working with Lifetime, I love seeing you chime in here. And I've actually, sometimes I guess I'm a little surprised, like, oh, they keep coming to the question, you know, to the Q&As where we talk about a lot of the basics. But I had one family tell me recently, well, I figure I can never hear it too many times, and every time I sort of learn something new or it sticks with me different. So I just love seeing all of you here in different phases that you're going through. I know there's even some matched families on the call tonight. And I just think it's awesome to see all of you in this position of just trying to absorb and prepare and do what you can now, so that when that opportunity comes, you are able to say yes with confidence and keep moving forward to do the best you can to be there for that opportunity so that you can meet that baby. So Kim, is there anything you want to add before we wrap up tonight?
No, I think we have it all covered, but Libby and I are really coming up with some upcoming webinars that we hope you're going to enjoy. Our wheels are turning inside our little brains, and so we're going to keep you posted, so keep an eye on your emails for the next upcoming webinars, and you know, feel free to browse through adoptionteleconference.com if you missed anything. If you see something there, if you're looking for something there that you don't see anymore, ask us and maybe we can have a link to that. Maybe it's not public anymore, but maybe we can get you a private link to it.
Absolutely. So we hope to see all of you again soon, and look forward to emails about webinars coming up in November, because November is National Adoption Awareness Month, and we have a few things planned that are a little different than what we've done recently. So I look forward to getting those coordinated and sharing that information with you so that you can look forward to those. In particular, I think one that will be really exciting is having a Q&A where you get to just ask any questions to other adoptive parents, and that they will give you their insight and expertise, and it won't just be about how their story unfolded. It'll just be more specifically like we're doing tonight, just taking questions off the screen here and just addressing them as much as we can. So thank you to everyone who chimed in tonight, and if you were too shy to speak up or if you were joining us by phone, I just want to say we appreciate you as much, and we hope that tonight's call was helpful for all of you. And we look forward to keeping in touch and seeing you on here again soon.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for being with us.
Good night. 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 Good night.